All right, welcome everybody. I'm really excited for this conversation we're about to have between two excellent people. We've got Steve Yegge and Nathan Sobo. Steve has worked for Amazon and Google and most recently Sourcegraph on all sorts of different projects. You may know him from his amazing blog stuff. He's got a book coming out entitled Vibe Coding with Gene Kim. Nathan is the founder CEO of Zed, who makes an IDE. Full disclosure, I work at Zed, but my role here is to be an impartial, host and and not to like try to take sides or anything like that. So here we are. We're setting the stage. Like a year ago, Sonnet 3.5 comes out. This kind of kicks off the whole like agentic AI thing. Steve has been using this a ton. You've talked about, Steve, how like recently you got a new computer and you found you didn't even bother installing an IDE on it because that's just not your workflow anymore. You've talked about how you're really into these CLI agentic AI tools. You mentioned like in the past the phrase like the death of the IDE, and you had an interview recently where you were saying like, everybody listening in, if you've got an IDE open and you're looking at source code, you're doing it wrong. And I'm sure you'll add some nuance to that in this conversation. And then on the other side, we've got Nathan, who's been working on IDEs for 10 plus years. Originally, it was like co-creator of Atom back in the day, which spun off Electron. And, now 10 years later, he's working on Zed, which is, his vision for the future of IDEs. And I'd love to just start with sort of getting both of your predictions about maybe like the next 12 months and IDEs over that sort of time frame, and then we can kind of free form a little bit more from there. But Steve, why don't we start with you? Just like what do you see like 12 months from now? If you can fast forward in the future, obviously there's the long tail, but that's a short enough window, but still kind of far enough out that we gotta make some predictions. What do you see the role of the IDE being 12 months from now?
Let's keep this interesting for our viewers. You're going down. You're going down. It's going to disappear. You're going to be penniless. No, I mean, come on, right? I mean, like, look, okay, for starters, I'm just going to go, I'm going to straight up, I'm going to say, I do believe that right now, okay, there's a tipping point. There's a transition point where like you're either old fashioned. It's not even old school. You're old fashioned. You're kind of a dinosaur, just most of you, okay? And then, or you've broken free into the new world, all right? And
Right.
the razor that you can measure that with, you'll know, is if you wake up one day and go, I haven't opened Cursor in like 2 weeks, then you're in the club, all right? This is really happening right now. And I see it happen to people all the time. You can look around online, you'll see it. It's not just me. People are saying, "Where's my IDE? I haven't been using it lately." Okay. Now that's pretty big words. We've had IDEs for like 40 years. I was here in the industry when they showed up, and everyone was actually pretty excited about them. They were nice, right? And they're still nice. Okay. So I want to kick the conversation up because I think we've got a lot to talk about here, right? Because I think by the end of this thing, we got to figure out what the next IDE is going to look like. And I don't think either of us really 100% knows, but I think we can get there, maybe with some audience participation, right? Because let's face it, man, if I've switched to a bunch of command lines, what that says is that the IDE is missing, right? That the IDE that I need. And I can tell you
Right.
a laundry list of things that I do every single day in my outer loop or things that I do in my inner loop with the agents that I wish an IDE were helping me with, right? But IntelliJ is not helping me. Cursor's not helping me, right? They're looking at it a very different way. And the reason is that my role has changed. As an individual contributor, I'm no longer building cars, the sophisticated car building tools. I'm now running a factory full of workers building cars. And that the dashboard that I need, which I envision to be Tom Cruise style, like I'm just right moving screens around with my hands because I want this thing on my phone. I mean, come on. Once you start working with these autonomous coding agents and you're sitting at dinner and you're like, man, that one's not working right now, but it could be, right? And you could be checking in with it on your phone, right? And so like
Right.
the integrate the I part of the IDE. Here's the thing, man. You guys are getting me on a rant, and I'm going to go on and on. But just to set the stage really briefly, I think that the IDE monolith architecture is kind of flawed, right? Because I mean, they just kind of grew into this. Everyone's going to come to us, and if you want to integrate, it's an integrated environment, and the way it's integrated is you integrate with us by writing a plugin with our crummy DSL that we're going to deprecate every single week, right? That's how it works. And that's why, I mean, so that's why they're kind of integrated, but not really. And realistically, your AI needs to be able to do everything for you. And that means it can't sit around waiting for somebody to build a plugin for it to talk to Slack or to talk to some random, maybe talk to some vibe coded software you wrote. All right. You just can't wait. So it has to invert, it has to flip the model around somehow. You have to make an IDE that allows people to extend it with vibe coding, I think would be like the first. Right. I mean, like get out of the starting gate, the new world. IDEs have to be so well integrated with everything else, better than they are now. And at
Right.
orchestrating those things that you got to open them up even more. And I understand how hard that is and building a platform and launching it and blah, blah, blah. Right. But let's start there. I think it's about
Mm,
orchestration, right? I think that's where we're
mm.
headed. What do you think?
All right,
Oh,
Nathan, what
shall
do
I?
you 12 months. What do you
It's
think?
hard. Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to respond a little bit to what Steve said. And I actually think we agree on maybe more than I thought. If, I'm just going from those headlines you mentioned or whatever. To me, it's kind of like the IDE is dead. Long live the IDE. Or maybe the IDE needs to be reinvented in some very fundamental ways in order to be useful. So, yeah, what I see 12 months from today is, I mean, our vision from the beginning with that, by the way, when you mentioned I being integrated, and the question is, back in the day when IDEs first entered the scene, what did it mean to be integrated? I mean, it was basically just an IDE that could run your build, or an editor that could run your build, talk to your compiler, point out your errors in line. It integrated these aspects of the experience that previously had been unbundled, previously had been Vim and a compiler or whatnot, right? And so it sort of bundled what had previously been unbundled and made the developer more productive as a result of that. But when we started Zed in 2021, I actually did not know that LLMs were coming. I'm going to admit that. Like, I hadn't played with GPT-3. I had no idea what was about to hit us. But the one thing that I always felt like needed to be integrated in the definition of IDE was the existence of your teammates. That was one thing that was like the underlying passion sort of motivating me, other than I just wanted a fundamentally better tool that was fast and native. Um, I also wanted, in under the umbrella of what it meant to be integrated, the rest of my team to exist in my authoring environment with me. And so that was a big reason to kind of vertically integrate around that idea of the software creation environment as a sort of fundamentally collaborative environment. Fast forward a couple of years, and now we have these new kinds of collaborators, basically programs interacting with LLMs, aka agents, right? And so I very much view this as a good development for that vision that we had of bringing collaborators under the umbrella of what it means to be integrated. That's why we engineered Zed around CRDTs. That's why we have big plans to scale that up and go further with that. So I really view, sorry, this is a long-winded way of getting to the 12-month vision, but I view in 12 months, at least, I don't know about IDEs generally, but where I'd like to go with Zed is um, we really view this as a collaborative environment with multiple humans and multiple agents interacting in this very continuous way. Scaling up the work we've done around CRDTs to create this illusion, basically, that we're all inhabiting this shared space together, even if we might be in different environments. Maybe there's a couple of humans that are connected in a graphical interface that's optimized for viewing and understanding software and following each other and agents around in that environment. Um, yeah, that's really, and one more thing that you brought up that I really liked, and I agree with you very strongly on, is in a world where your agent kind of needs to do everything for you, it's a bummer to have the agent all tied up in the code of an editor. And I think your point about IDEs being monolithic is, yeah, really well taken. The VS Code revolution, I think, in the previous generation of kind of the previous revolution of what it meant to be a popular software development tool, um, was taking a lot of that intelligence, the old school, old fashioned, as you say, algorithmic intelligence of language servers, and sort of moving that out of process, unbundling it, allowing a community driven open approach around that. And I really see the future going the same way with agents, that ultimately agents are going to be these programs that you might need to put a user interface on an agent in this environment or that environment. Maybe the same agent might be surfaced both in your IDE and in your spreadsheet in different ways. But the fundamental idea of bringing these things in as these sort of I can never say that word, anthropomorphic collaborators in your authoring environment with you is like a real strong part of what I'd like to see things move toward in the next 12 months.
Yeah, that's a really interesting angle that I don't spend enough time thinking about. I can tell you the angle of okay, so for starters, agree, that's fantastic.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, no, I mean, right. I mean, like Sourcegraph AMP, which is the agent that my company works on, is largely distinguished. I mean, it's got a lot of cool features, but I mean, really, it's the team stuff, right? I mean, it's the fact that the threads are shared and the collab. You can see what your coworkers are doing and the leaderboards and all that. And nobody would have guessed. I don't think I would have guessed that that would have motivated me at all. In fact, many people might have thought it would be demotivating, but it's sort of the opposite. It's just all fun. Um, and I can certainly see, I mean, like there's a clear case for the IDE helping you manage multiple agents because you have to onboard them and you have to merge their work together and you have to like update their to-do lists and all that stuff, right? Where it starts to get really interesting and where nobody knows how it's gonna work, and I'd be really curious to know if you guys have thought about this at all. I mean, I'm on like secret AI gossip industry lists, and they talk about this stuff like as of yesterday, which is like how do how do things work when there are multiple humans, each with teams of multiple AIs, and they make a team, and how do they collaborate? Because that's this weird two-level. What shared artifacts do they have, right? What's the central, way? How's the project even governed? How are people brought on and off it? And
Right.
it's a mystery. I mean, we don't. I mean, I'm sure there are people out in the industry trying it right now, but I don't think anybody's so far along that they've like sat down and documented like how the experience went. Gene and I didn't have any of that experience when we wrote our vibe coding book. And so it's largely focused on you as an IC becoming a team of your own. But what
Right.
happens when you've got teams now collaborating as a big, super team, right?
Right.
Zed and Rust could solve this problem, right? You guys have built, I mean, like one of the great things about IDEs, I don't know if people really understand this unless you've really worked on an IDE yourself. They're unusual pieces of software because they're designed to wrap things. That's kind of what they do. They wrap other tools. And so they wrap
Right.
everything real well. And so what that means is that the thing that you see and when you interact with them, this the sort of veneer of the UI is a really thin layer over a really rich platform that can be repurposed and extended in a lot of different directions. So they're more kind of like agile and flexible, even though they kind of have this legacy burden of API debt that they accumulate, right? So you guys are in
Hmm.
a position to, I mean, and what we're looking for is a new IDE here, right? I mean,
Right.
effective, like, or probably more realistically, I see it almost like an inversion of control. Look, you're still going to want to occasionally open the hood and look at the engine, right? Once in a while, you're
Right.
going to want to
Right.
actually use a real IDE. I mean, you're like, screw it, man. I've tried 3 models and none of them can figure this out. I'm getting out a debugger and I'm going to step through it myself, right? Which I've
Right.
done. I've even got to a point where threatening to use a debugger got the model to actually give me the right answer. So right, we're building out this IDE, and man, I don't know. I just want to know how this thing works, but I think that you guys have the raw material, right? Like,
Right.
I don't know how you turn that into, I mean, like what I think you do is you have to pay really, really, really close attention to how people are working, the most effective people who are the most effective with the coding agents today, specifically the
Right.
autonomous ones, not the chat bots, but the ones who go off and work for longer and longer periods where you're trying to keep them on the rails. Yeah,
Right. I mean, whoa, there was a lot there to
there was a
respond
lot
to,
there.
different pieces. There was the sort of how do we do, and I think you are right that nobody knows. I have a hypothesis for how it could work, and then we will see what happens when that contacts reality, which is right now we have we have the ability to interact with our teammates in real time in Zed. So we have this tree of, we call them channels, but it's basically just like a directory tree. You can pop into one. There's a little pool of markdown text there in every channel that you can kind of use for some lightweight project planning or something. And then you click on the channel and boom, you're there. You can share your project. other people can pop into the channel with you. They could potentially share their project, and you're following each other around inside the code, talking through code. As a result of building out that fundamental infrastructure at Zed, and I think there's more we need to do to really, I think what we have right now, I would call kind of alpha quality that we actually shipped. We have more work to do on it, but I think even now, the way that our team works using this infrastructure is very different than a lot of other teams in the world, in that we don't do a lot of static code review. We don't spend a lot of times looking at we don't spend a lot of time looking at diffs. We spend a lot of time talking to each other in the code, getting on the same page about something, and then once we're there, sometimes we don't even do like a formal diff-based code review. Like we'll just fix forward or something and roll forward on each other's work. And so the style of collaboration is very much about conversations in the code. My dream, and I don't know if it's 12 months, it may be longer, it may be something that involves collaboration with a bigger lab with nuclear reactors or whatever, but my dream would be to interact with agents in a very multimodal way that resembles how I interact with my teammates in Zed, where we're talking about the code, I'm following them around as they're moving around inside of it. And that way, when I show up on an agent that's been working for a while and it's got a 30,000 line diff or whatever, I could just be like, hey, can you tell me what you're doing? And it would be like, oh, sure. Let me take you over here. Let me take, and it would even maybe have audio, right? Or text alongside the audio. But for me, like the dream of Zed has always been this vision of a new kind of conversation that like interleaves with the code base itself, rather than being kind of attached to these static diff artifacts produced by Git, which is the only thing that's possible if you don't assume that you kind of own the editor surface. So that was a big reason why, other than just wanting to make a fundamentally better editor, which was just like, I just wanted to do that intrinsically because I've been working on it so long, maybe, and it was like my white whale. I don't know why. But beyond that, the opportunity to, yeah, surface this new way of thinking about how conversations about code can happen. Then the final point, one more thing, and then I want to let you say something. Yeah, sorry. Is when you talk about an IDE being a really good wrapper, I really agree with that. And I think that's the ideal role, is sort of getting closer toward that Unix ideal of a tool that does things well. The challenge is just for graphical user interfaces, like there's something kind of inherently monolithic in some ways about a GUI. I mean, you can make them extensible. We have plans to make things more extensible. But I think there's lots of opportunities to do things like the language server protocol, where we are interacting with other processes and really making this thing a wrapper and a connector. And I just want to say that while that seems thin, I don't know. When I decided to build an editor long ago before creating Atom, I totally underestimated. I'm like, how hard could it be? It's just some like text in a buffer, right? And fast forward 15 years, like it's very difficult to, even though that is a very conceptually simple GUI to build, it's not easy. Like it's a simple idea, but it's still not easy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I mean, I thought, how simple can this user extensible 2D video game be? And here I am 30 years later, still working on it. Like it'll get here any day. Because both of us are building platforms, and those things are effectively a lifetime of work, because a platform is almost like a living thing, right? It can grow to do anything you want, right?
Right.
So look,
And the quality of a platform needs to be very high, which takes time, period.
it does.
Yeah.
It does take time, but it pays off, right? So like the working model that you described just now, it reminds me of that famous essay, Starbucks doesn't use optimistic lock. Starbucks uses optimistic locking, doesn't use pessimistic lock. It was a really great article. And it was just basically about this notion that maybe code reviews should be like instead of blocking, they should roll forward, and when I worked at GeoWorks, who had the highest hiring bar of any company that I've ever worked for, and even Amazon said so when they acquired us with an acquihire, they were just like, what happened? And the reason was we did something the industry can't do, right? Which was, make people work there for 6 months as an intern before you can come in full time, right?
Mhm.
But Oh, where am I God? Where was I going with this? Sorry, what
Well,
was
we
the
were
point I
talking
was trying to
about
make?
sort of code
Mm.
review, like the IDE versus like other ways of verifying code. There was actually a question in the chat about do either of you know people who are writing production software using something like Claude Code, like a terminal-based app, and not reading the code generated line by line, just shipping it. So let's pose the question to both of you. What do you see as the role of code review in an IDE or outside an IDE when it comes to vetting or not vetting what an agent comes up with before shipping it?
I mean, I will speak for myself. I do a lot of agentic editing, actually. I am now running a company that's, more than 30 people, and I love engineering and software. And agentic editing it feels like this fast track for me into having an impact, um, with less time. That's my experience. So I review a lot of the code that I write, but I will say that I don't necessarily under, understand it. Definitely don't understand it as well as if I'd written it myself. I use test-driven development pretty heavily. I make sure I understand the tests that I'm writing. Like, I'm using these other mechanisms, but it is kind of this fix-forward attitude of like, you're never going to understand it as well as you wrote it yourself. You're always going to kind of be looking over it, and you're always going to be like, okay, how does this behave? What does this do? It's more
That's where I was
nuanced. Yeah.
going. That's where I was
Yeah.
going with the GeoWorks guys being fixed forward. I remember now. It was magical, right?
Mm.
Because we would just check code in. We pair programmed everything, and we would like, and there'd be an understanding about the code, and you would check it in, and you would just know that it had met this quality bar. And yeah, there were bugs in it, but you'd roll forward, right? I don't think people can work that way, and I don't think most people actually like to work that way, and they've actually resisted it. And it's really interesting because you have envisioned this utopia where you're having conversations in the code about and honestly, I'm not, I mean, for some humans it works great, but for a lot of humans, I actually think they prefer to like have it more transactional.
Mhm.
And yet the AIs will be happy to have those conversations in the code with you. So I think you kind of got lucky in building something that's going to be super, super AI friendly, which I think is the first step towards building something that like, the singularity.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like, people don't. I grew up pair programming at Pivotal Labs. I don't know if you've ever heard of that place, but it was like 9 to 6 with a 1 hour lunch break. We would pair program all day. Two keyboards, two mice plugged into one screen. I'm a social guy and love that. I think there are probably people listening to this that would be like running screaming in the other direction. And I admit I would get home and like collapse into the bed from like full on software, full on social engagement with another human. It
It's
was
exhausting.
intense. Yeah.
It's exhausting. And you know what?
Um,
People aren't calling this out, and people are just starting to call it out. It's a realization. I do a lot of agentic vibe coding, but I don't think I've ever done more than 20 hours in a single week because it is actually really, even though you're super, super productive. And that big dial that the industry was just given of how many engineers to fire to pay for the AI for your other engineers, that dial, it's really ugly. Going from 0 to 100. Well, so that, I don't know, it becomes kind of an interesting proposition. Um,
I get, yeah. So, and from the beginning, like when I was pitching, Zed to get our seed round, the vision I was painting was always, I know that full on real time synchronization, right? Like where we're literally working on the same working copy at the same time, may not be for everybody. But my thesis is that what could be for everybody is potentially, how Slack, like if I DM you in Slack and you reply right away, we're having a chat. If you reply in 2 days, we're emailing. And so for me, the vision I have is less that I want to put somebody in front of another human being and put them on the spot unless they want that. And more that I just want to bring all those conversations about software that are happening in all these places, snapshots of the code that are 3 days old and need to be merged in Slack, potentially on screen sharing sessions or whatever. Bring all these conversations kind of to the code itself along a range of time frames, basically. From
yeah,
sort of async to, oh, now we're going back and forth. Maybe now we should just talk to each other because that would be more efficient. And that
yeah,
was kind of, it was for me that felt like a continuum. But you are right, by the way. I think that we are lucky that AI has come along, because the main problem with people is they could judge you. Uh, they could be annoying. Bad breath is less of an issue over remote connections or whatever, but like you have to be at the same time as them. They might be sleeping. And so there's a way in which these artificial collaborators like conveniently solve a lot of the problems with kind of the
They
underlying
do.
technology we're building. Yeah.
And the vision that you laid out is remarkably similar to the just stupid hand wavy vision that I thought of this morning, which is like, what would I really want out of an IDE? And I
Mhm.
envisioned myself like coming in the morning with a cup of coffee, and there's a bunch of like, supervisors there, all with their own teams, and they all brief me on like, where things are at, and they like ask me how things are. And honestly, right, that's kind of the channels structure that you guys have already set up. It's already there. So like,
Sort of. There's just no
truthfully, I mean,
AI
look,
isn't it doing anything, but yeah.
I just think,
Sorry.
look, I mean, like how much of your day do you spend looking at the diffs produced by the AIs?
Um, Not a lot, honestly. Yeah. I'll use them as a cue to review the code, if that makes sense. Like I actually just go look at the tests that they wrote, and then I'm like, okay, what is right? And I guess it's all inside a green diff, but that's kind of neither here nor there in a lot of cases. Um, but I don't know. I could see that varying depending on the task, and it does for me,
It
honestly.
does.
Yeah.
Absolutely it does, right? And if you're updating a nuclear reactor, you look a little more closely than, right, if you're updating a picture of a nuclear reactor. So like, yeah, those diffs, man, I think that sits kind of at the heart of this, right? Because ultimately code is versionable, it's diffed, it goes through this, ledgered evolution. And that's like the one piece that we need to kind of keep into this workflow. Like, is if you want to be able to like look at the diff, because I mean, looking at the diffs is a little different from reading them. You can scan them to look for bad stuff, like if the agent
Right.
is being naughty,
Right.
right? Because like your agent will tell you happily when it's being naughty, right? It'll be like, well, I finished implementing the mock framework instead of the production thing you wanted. And you're like, well, actually, I wanted the production thing, right?
Right.
So like, man, if the IDE could do a better job of surfacing, right? Which means to me, like you need agents in your IDE that are watching for you. Are you guys doing that yet?
Critic agents, no. It's definitely something we've thought about, but we're still, yeah, behind on that, I would say, or
I
yeah,
mean,
haven't
right?
implemented it
I
yet.
mean, like, dude, I'm actively working on the stupidest project ever, but it may actually turn into something because it's going so fast, which is putting an autonomous coding agent inside of Emacs in Emacs Lisp, and it works really well. And it's because Emacs has all this stuff, right? This platform wrappy stuff that it can use now to go and get things done. So, man, I mean, look, come on. I mean, we have to agree on at least this, or I'm not ending this call. I'm just going to filibuster, right? You're going to put AI inside of Zed, right? And it's agents that are going to be watching what you do and like, yeah,
Yeah. For me, yeah, exactly. And that like the ideal is putting AI in Zed as every bit of a collaborator as another human, ideally. That
that's
would
a
be the
good way to
goal.
look at it.
And
Yeah,
then
yeah, yeah,
have
for
you
sure.
interoperate with them or humans in actually a fairly similar way. And then also remembering, because of the fact that we control the data layer and can capture all this, and don't worry, we will do it in a way that respects everyone's privacy. We have always done that at Zed. But
Yeah.
um and we'll figure that out. I won't do it until we do. But like capturing what were those conversations between the humans and the AIs and putting it all back together so that you can come to a piece of code and understand what happened here that isn't just evident in the code, if that makes sense. That to me feels like the opportunity of like controlling the actual surface, if that makes sense. Having enough control to really orchestrate and capture all these conversations that are going on attached to the code and in the code base. As kind of, it's like we're all playing World of Warcraft, and there's people and non-player characters all inhabiting this like network of fully synchronized working copies together. That feels like a fun world to inhabit.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be, um, I was thinking advertising, but what was I going? It's going to be a world where, yeah, I mean, look, I think we're headed this way, to be honest. But God, I had some big takedown for it, but I've forgotten what it was because I like the idea
Sure.
so
Well,
much.
here, let me bring in an audience question. So this is kind of keying off of something Steve said earlier in the conversation about, like the old like dinosaur way of doing things. But Steve, you did also mention at some point, sometimes you want to go all the way under the hood. Maybe not all the time, maybe not as much as you used to, but sometimes you do. The question was, what about the Vim only users? Are they dinosaurs? Now I'm gonna read between the lines here and kind of infer that what they're talking about is basically like, what about people who don't want to use AI at all? Are they dinosaurs? What is the future of the IDE for them, or programming for them?
Oh, so they just want to work the old way?
That's what I
Yeah,
infer
I'm
the
really
question's asking.
sorry. Yeah, no, I'm sorry. You that will not be a successful outcome for you. It will not be a path that you can follow for very long. You could probably find places you can hide, little corners of the industry where you can hide out for a little while, a few more years, 2 or 3 years. Okay, but you would be pretty silly at this point to bet on that being a long-term career option for you. You guys got to understand, all knowledge work is going to go the way that programming is going. We're the leaders in this because we're verifiable with tests and whatnot, right?
Hmm.
But and I don't mean replacing people. I mean, you're all going to become what they call chimeras now, what the researchers calling chimera, human AI hybrid workers. It's AI is going to be part of your work every day, and it'll be fine because it's an AI and you can talk to it and shit. It's not like this is hard, right? But you have to do it. I'm sorry.
I guess my perspective is I use I use agentic editing quite a bit lately. Especially over the past like handful of months since our support has gotten more solid. Um, there are people on the Z team that operate inside, close to maybe more than that now, 600,000 line production Rust code base, who don't do a lot of agentic editing because it just doesn't work that well in our code base.
It's
It's
only
Rust.
600,000 lines, you
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
which is a
Um,
small code base for an AI, right? So, like, I mean, like,
mm,
I should probably make a caveat, which is that we're undergoing a transition in our industry right now. And honest, I'll have to say this again and again. There are two. You're stuck in one of two worlds right now. You're either working on a big monolith, and AI is really not working very well for you, or you're working in a microservices world or greenfield or whatever, and AI is working great for you. All right. And that's causing all kind of weird impedance mismatches inside of companies like OpenAI. They have ChatGPT, the world's biggest monolith, and they've got some large fraction of their engineers adopting Codex for agentic coding. And they're telling us, me and Gene Kim, that performance review time is going to be a nightmare because the ones that are doing agentic coding are 10 times as productive as the ones working on the monolith, right? And so to
right.
the fight, they're like, we got to split up the monolith. But of course, the monolith people are like, what? This is the biggest thing. And we don't have time to split
Well,
it
and
up,
also like
right?
small baby chicks turn into chickens and then Tyrannosaurus Rexes, right? Like that's just sort
And
of the
maybe small
process.
is just a large horde of small things that the AI still can't deal with, right? Yes. So it's kind of a big mess. And so I'm certainly not suggesting that, you should drop everything today and, only do agentic coding or that it is a panacea or even that you will like it. I'm not even suggesting that you will like it. In
You
time,
probably
you'll
should
like it a lot.
understand it. Yeah,
You'll
you
like it a
probably
lot in
should
time.
understand it. I'll agree
But
with
you
that.
do
Like,
you do have to
yeah.
sit down and try it now. It's too late you can't. It's not like you're late, but it is time. You have to come and like learn how these things work, and
Well, also just
they're
like don't be
weird.
closed-minded. I don't know.
I
Like if
mean,
to me, don't be closed-minded is like overall like a good advice in general for life and programmers especially is like, hey, there's this new thing, at least try it. But I will say, I've done amazing freaking things with AI. Like we've had some challenges scaling our 4-year-old Kubernetes cluster that was never designed to have, tens of thousands of people connected to it at once. Luckily, Richard's been helping with this actually. At the beginning, I agentically built a full simulator for the Cloudflare platform that's like fully generic so that we have kind of our production code written against an abstraction that fully simulates everything Cloudflare will do. And I agentically engineered that because, like, yeah, of course, the Cloudflare APIs are like in the distributions of these models. And most of this is just like big sweeping, just covering all the surface area, right? It was incredible. I generated the renderer, if you're a Z user, with GPT-4. A lot of the render, I had to come back and like make sure it actually worked. But like I wrote the first render with like not a prayer in hell of graphics programming, and somehow we managed to make that work. But it was amazing to let that generate. So, but I've also wasted a bunch of time like barking up the wrong tree with an agent and letting it go haywire and go off the reservation, right? And so I don't know, like where my ledger stands, like where I've been able to do things I couldn't have done at all, versus wasted a bunch of time where if I'd done it manually, it would have been faster. I don't know if that's your experience, Steve, or where you land there, but yeah.
Yeah, I rarely wind up in the situation now where doing it manually would have been faster because I have an overabundance of caution when I'm working with the agents now from a bunch of train wrecks, many of which I've been
Right.
documenting online. But like just today, I realized I was going to make a change that was just risky enough that I was like, screw this. Our work stream for the next week is going to be nothing but working on the design document for this project, and then we'll write some code, right? So I actually started up my first ever agent design work stream where we're literally just going to talk about this new API I want to build, right? And so as long as right, it's a very dangerous technology, a dangerous tool. You have to like learn, and this is how I wound up writing a 300-page book with Gene Kim. A, I didn't want to write a book. B, he didn't want to write a book. He had just finished one, right? But we were trying to explain just the basics of blocking and tackling, of keeping these toddlers with chainsaws on ice skates, right? It's just absolutely, they're remote controlled, and yeah, they're more productive, but I mean, they're toddlers on ice skates with chainsaws, right? It's like getting this word across has been so hard. So my answer to you is, man, no, this is not easy, and it's kind of not a happy thing that everybody's going to have to learn it, right?
Right.
But by the same token, there exist people now, old and young, all the way from people coming out of retirement, all the way to people just graduating or not even graduating, just like leaving school, okay, who are figuring this out. They're learning how to use agentic coding with big monoliths. They're learning
Right.
all the techniques from our book and more, right? Through the school hard knocks. And those people are going to become extremely valuable on the market. And eventually they're going to displace the people who didn't figure it out. Okay.
I
And
think
it's
that
going to
makes
take
sense.
time, but man, it's happening now. You can see it happening now.
Right. And it's never going to be any slower than it is today to just essentially conjure a diff on demand, right? Like, is basically like if you fast forward and these agentic loops that could be a little slow and ponderous at times make that 10x faster, 100x
Yeah.
faster. And so it's like, even in the early days of programming, right? Like we had assembly code, right? And then we built higher level languages, but even those higher level languages had goto. And then we're like, oh, goto is considered harmful. Like we should stop doing that and do it a different way. And we had OO and other functional programming, right? And so it's like with this entire story of writing software and creating software, it's always been what are our tools? What are the implications of those tools? And how do we as engineers learn to steer clear of the pitfalls of a goto ridden spaghetti code mess, et cetera?
Yeah.
It's
And
just like
we're,
the
you know
same
what?
story
I
again.
love
Yeah.
that, dude. I love the go-to analogy, right? Because I mean, like we're in the 60s right now. Like as far as like in terms of how evolved our tools are, think about it. We're using terminals. I mean, it actually looks a lot like programming in the 60s and 70s right now, right? Which
My
shows,
joke was like the teleprinter, Unix was written on a teleprinter. Like he literally, those two guys like did not have a screen. It was like a dot matrix printer hooked to a cabinet the size of this room or whatever. Like
and
that,
dude, that's
yeah.
where we are today. And people look at the tools that they have available today and they're like, oh my God, I can't work with this, right? But I mean, like, you got to understand that the guts underneath is actually quite capable, and the pretty face will get better. But you kind of
Mhm.
got to jump on the bandwagon now because the way they work as this sort of real smart, but also fundamentally unreliable helpers, like is going to change the way that it's going to change the way you approach software development in a lot of different ways. Yeah. And
I mean, I
honestly,
could definitely, yeah.
an
Sorry, go
IDE will
ahead.
be
Sorry.
huge. No, I was just going to say an IDE will be hugely helpful in all of this. Please build us one.
Right. Okay. So it's like we need to reinvent and rethink what the IDE of the future is going to be. And I guess like I agree with that. And a lot of Zed users, especially the ones that are not finding value in the particular domain that they're working on from a lot of these AI technology. Maybe they've tried it for whatever reason, it's not the setup for success for them. They're asking, God, why do you work on these AI features instead of, you name it, Windows, we're working
Oh
on
my
it.
God,
Settings UI, we're working on it.
don't
Uh,
let old school programmers hold you back. Hold your feet to the fire, man. Look forward for sure.
well, yeah, and again, they're not. And so my answers to them is like,
Good.
we have to meet the present. And like the present, in my present reality, it's like this weird circular problem of like the software that I work on requires the software that I work on to have support for language servers. So it's, but I think, there are other pieces of software of Zed's nature where the, I think traditional is a fair way of phrasing it. I don't think it's old fashioned to have an algorithmic understanding of, is this correct or not? You just might argue all you need to
Oh,
do is run the compiler if it all
yeah,
that,
no, I
yeah,
mean, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Like, if I gave that impression, I misspoke, right? I mean,
Oh, okay.
you're still accountable for every line of code you produce with AI. It's your
Okay.
code. It's not the AI's code, right? And you have to understand it to whatever level is appropriate for whether you're working on a weekend project or a nuclear reactor, right?
Right. But what I
Yeah.
will say, yeah, the other side is just the reason we are working on AI and going a little slower on the traditional tool set as we work on AI is it's really about that, I don't know, the classic story of being disrupted from below. I mean, Digital Equipment Corporation, the company that produced that PDP-11 on which Unix was written on the teleprinter, right? They were king shit in 1983. Oops, I swore. I wasn't supposed to swear on this. It's live. They
I think the
were
S word is okay on YouTube.
Okay. They were incredible in 1983, and the IBM PC was a little toy at that point, right? Or whatever it was, right? I was born in 83. But anyway, before that even, right? And then over the course of what, a decade, the PC morphed from a toy into a really formidable technology that undercut all those mini computers, right? And so for me, that's why we're working on AI, is that some people are getting incredible value out of it right now. Me being one of those people on certain occasions, and I also sometimes waste time, admittedly. And some people aren't yet, but it's about learning, being open, being receptive to this new technology, making sure that like as this PC morphs into the computers we have today or whatever, that interrupted the mainframes and other things that were the professional real way of doing it back when the PC was a toy, to make sure that when that same process, and maybe it won't, maybe there's some cliff that this all or plateau that it hits and it never gets any better. To me, that seems like a bad bet for like my own creativity, my own life, my company, etc. That's why we're doing it. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, it's getting better. It's been getting better. I mean, we're moving up
Agreed.
the abstraction ladder. We're able to build things that were just inconceivable when I was programming in the 90s, and we can do them trivially now. So I mean, like, I just your point about right neuroplasticity, right? About open-mindedness, about like being able to adapt. You just kind of highlighted really quickly what happened over like 5 decades, and we're starting to get into a much more compressed acceleration cycle. You, if you've got one takeaway from this is you can't just sit back and let AI kind of figure stuff out. You got to jump in there and figure out how to make AI work for you. Okay.
Right.
However,
Right.
however it fits your working style. And if it's chat for now, use chat. If it's agents, great. But recognize that there's a big learning curve ahead of you. And IDEs are still catching up too, because we don't really know what the work looks like yet. Okay.
Right.
So they're still an important piece of the puzzle because you do need to dive down and go into the manual mode periodically, right? But man,
Right.
get on the bandwagon, right? Are we agreed on that? Get on that AI bandwagon.
I mean, do what you want to do. That's my overall attitude toward everybody else in life. Like, do what you want to do. But I would,
Yeah, but they're like, go
I
ahead.
would say like, there's an opportunity here. I personally have seen it. There's also times when it doesn't work. I would encourage, if you're listening, you must be somewhat interested in this. Go find a domain. If it's not working in a particular way, go play with it somewhere else. Start experimenting with it. I do think it's a great idea. If you don't want to use it, there's a big checkbox in Zed that says disable AI. I think you should play with it though. Yeah,
Don't
yeah.
check that box. Do not check that box.
But for me, it's like if you want to check that box, be my guest. We're all about freedom. It's why we're open source, et cetera, right? Like I try not to be too pushy about anything, but yeah. But I think it's exciting and an opportunity. Why not to give it a look, folks? Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, why don't we just wrap up with just one very quick thing? I just wanted to pull on one thread from earlier and make sure we didn't forget about this, which was some sort of tactical, specific future future IDE things that we would like to see. So, Steve, you mentioned one was like mobile, like being integrated across multiple devices. Nathan, you mentioned collaboration, like being integrated in terms of like humans on your team collaborating and collaborating with AI agents. What else is on your wish lists? What are the things that you both think are like, we don't have these today, but we should have these in the future of the IDE, and we can wrap it up there.
Steve, I really want you to, I want to hear your wish list, honestly, so we can build it. Yeah, but yeah.
Let's start with diffs, somewhere around diff. Diffs are like the new, you know what I mean? The new medium that you work with for trying to figure out if the AI is doing the right thing or not. Because it'll say I did X, Y, Z, but really looking at those diffs as they scroll by. So if you can get intelligent summaries of the diffs, we could have, you know what I mean? Like if we can have I don't know, our diff technology is decent, but it wasn't really designed for the scale that we're seeing. And so
Right.
if we can think about scaling up the consumption of diffs, probably by introducing an AI layer in there somewhere, that would
That
be a
makes
super
sense.
first step. Yeah.
Right. Like what part of this huge diff? I mean, that's always been my problem with pull requests in general, is it takes time and sort of collapses it into space. And yet there's this sense in which the chronology of how something is developed relates to the topology of its impact on the code base. And they need
Yeah.
to be, or I don't know what the right word for space is, but yes, topology, I guess. Yeah. So how are those two things interrelating? And then the idea of using AI or even traditional tools like syntax-based diffing or other things to just level
Mhm,
that up. That makes a lot of
mhm,
sense.
mhm.
Keep going. I jumped in though. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, man, I want to come in with my cup of coffee and I want to have my supervisors tell me how my projects are going, man. I mean, like fundamentally, I think in terms of multiple projects now. I do. And
Mm,
that's what caused me yesterday to actually put a bunch of them on hold and kick off a new one to boot me up into the cloud. Because I want to be on my phone and I want to be working on my projects. And so to the extent that you turn me into that factory manager and not building the cars myself, but ensure that the cars are still, I can ensure the cars are still being built as if I had done them by hand. Man,
right.
that's the holy grail. That's right.
Right.
That's my, and what does that look like? Man, just iterate it on a little at a time, right? A little better here and there, right? And we'll get there.
Um, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, one practical thing that I think we need to invest in soon is the idea that agents are obviously not all running on your own machine. Maybe you all support that right now with AMP, right? Like you have kind of agents beyond one device. Is that is that going
I'm
yet?
about to
Not for
try it today, but I don't see anything architecturally that's going to keep it from working other than sometimes
awesome.
I want to do GUIs. And so where does that go? Right. But I'll figure that's not
Right.
in, right?
Right. Well, that's on your machine. I think ultimately, like, or if you can set up some kind of crazy,
No, I'm
forwarding
thinking
of your X11,
cloud,
blah blah blah. But
Chrome. Yeah,
yeah.
we'll figure it
Um,
out. But that's what people need to do. If you're going to be building a bunch of stuff and it's UI stuff and you want to do it in the cloud, that's kind of an unsolved problem today. There's opportunity. So
are we getting multi-agents? I mean, not like imminently, to be honest, but we're working on all this. I think our agent is getting a lot healthier. I'll say like that part of the code and we'll be going to be poised to iterate pretty quickly. I'm hoping. So multi-agent soon, but that's one thing on my list. Richard, what about you? Is there what's on your list? You do a lot of agentic editing, right?
Well, I mean, you got to be careful not to get me rolling, but I'm just the impartial host here. So, I mean, mostly I want to keep an eye on the clock here, because
Oh,
we did,
oh, okay,
yeah, we're right at time to wrap up. But yeah,
okay.
this is ended up being a super fascinating conversation. I love being a fly on a wall for it. So, thank you both. I really appreciate your taking the time to go through this. And I think one thing we can all agree on is that the future of IDEs is going to be interesting. We'll
The
see what.
IDE is dead. Long live the IDE. It's just going to be a
that'll work.
new thing, a new way of
IDE is
conceiving it.
dead. Long
And
live
we
the
have to meet
IDE.
the present. We need to live at the intersection of the present and be real and ship, and also think about what's coming and learn. I think both. Yeah. And I really enjoyed the conversation.
Me too, man. Great conversation. And thanks to everyone for listening in. We really appreciate having you here.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. All right. We'll end it up there. Thanks.
Thanks all.